Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Sharpening Your Showing Skills in a Shifting Market with MAPS coaches Jen Davis and Sarah Detmore. Please note this webinar is being recorded and you will automatically receive the webinar recording. If you have questions for your coach, please type them into the questions box located in your webinar control panel. Following the webinar, if you have any questions about today's call or coaching programs, please email us at maps@kw.com. That's all from me. Jen and Sarah, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Troy. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon or this morning, wherever you're coming from. It's still morning for me here. I'm in Houston. So my name is Sarah Detmore. I am so honored to be here with you guys today and be here with Jen Davis, who is my wonderful friend and co-host of a group coaching program that we have that we'll talk some more about here in just a bit. But today we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about who we are and where we come from. And then we're going to talk about some ways in which you can sharpen your showing skills right now when you're working with your buyers, especially in a shifting market. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. Jen, why don't you tell us who you are and where you're from?
Sure. So my name is Jen Davis. I am the CEO of Holt Homes Group in Springfield, Missouri. I have been on our team for 7.5 years. 6 of those years, I was our lead buyer specialist. So those of you that don't know me, I really was after building kind of this concept of a team within a team. And so I've gotten the chance to know Sarah very well, and so she knows more about my story. But what we did is I built a team on the buy side similarly to how you would build out the MREA model if you were the rainmaker. So I built it out. I had admin support, then we had lead generation support, and then eventually I added showing agents. And we have been closing over 200 units a year just on the buy side with myself and then those 2 showing agents. And so I'm excited to dive into this with you. I'm excited to learn with Sarah. I also am a group coach with MAPS, so super excited about partnering with MAPS and partnering with Sarah to bring you some really great content.
Yeah.
So Sarah, tell us about you. Where are you? What team are you on?
Depends on the day. No, so I'm Sarah Detmore. I am out of Houston, Texas. I am with the Loken Group. I was a buyer agent with the Loken Group. I moved into a lead buyer agent space and now have the opportunity to build out our buyer team within a team. I'm the VP of our buyer agent team with the Loken Group here in Houston. Also have the honor and privilege of serving as a MAPS one-on-one agent coach, and of course a co-host or co-coach, I said co-host earlier, a co-coach of a group coaching program that's very buyer focused with Jen Davis. So a little about the Loken Group. We have been with Keller Williams and in business for, I believe this is our 8th year. We run a pretty big team with high volume here in Houston. Last year we did just over 2,500 units, and we just keep doing it. We're doing a lot of business and we have a very big team. I think we have just under 100 agents on our team and it keeps growing. So here in Houston, Texas, it's hot in Houston today. I don't know how things are with you in Springfield, Jen, but let's go ahead and get started and talk about how we can maximize some of our showing skills in a shifting market and even kind of a unique market that we're in right now with all the COVID-19 stuff. So what are some things that the folks on our call today should be looking for as opportunities to sharpen those showing skills, especially right now in the midst of a pandemic?
Well, Sarah, I love this topic. So number one, the title of this slide is actually perfect. A shifting market equals opportunity. So the things that we want you to learn today, we want you to take one thing from today. What you choose what it is. If you can take one thing and implement it into your business, that will make an impact. That's our goal. So when we talk about what is opportunity in a shifting market, and we're going to dive pretty deep into this today, the opportunity is to figure out what those best practices are versus common practice. And based on this shifting market, what are you going to take from this that you can implement in your business regardless of what the market is doing, so that we can make some improvements in our business to increase efficiencies, increase profitability, and increase that consumer experience. So how do we use a shifting market as an opportunity to show fewer homes? Well, some of the heavy lifting is done for us, right, Sarah? I mean, some of this is done. The buyers know now that they're not getting into 10 different houses, and that they have to be very, very cautious when going to take a look at those properties. So when I look at this, you know, I made some notes for myself. It's interesting being on camera, right? Now we've got to, you know, look at the camera and look at our notes at the same time.
Well, I just moved this party hat that was on display in the back of my room. So in case you guys saw
wear the party hat, honestly.
I don't know.
So when I look at it though, we talk about setting clear expectations on the number of, on how the houses will be shown. So the how is, we're meeting those buyers where they're at. So the how really is going to depend on your localized area, what those rules are, and what makes the buyer feel comfortable. Is the buyer still okay with an in-person showing? And if they are the sellers okay with that in-person showing? So we've got to be very, very aware of what the market is that we're in and making sure that we make those adjustments. It's our job to meet the buyer where they are and provide a high level of service, and safety being the #1 priority. So Sarah's going to go into in a little bit what those expectations on what the expectations are, how we're going to show them. We're also going to set expectations on how many homes they will actually see. This works in a traditional market too, guys. So if you've been hesitant to take the jump on, or the leap into, when you're doing a buyer consult, setting a limit on showings, now's the time, because that heavy lifting is done for you. So what you can do is you can come in, and I very often will say, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we're really only going to look at 2 to 3 properties, because there are really only 2 to 3 properties that are going to fit your criteria in the event that I ask the right questions. And so when we get into that, all we're doing is, we're not saying, guys, that I'm only going to show them 2 or 3 houses and I'm forcing them to purchase a home. What we're saying is after 2 or 3 houses, I'm asking permission to do a regroup script that says, hey, we didn't find the house. We've looked at 3, I missed something. That old saying, Sarah and I talk about it a lot during this program, that buyers are liars. It's not true, guys. It's a lack of skill on the agent level. And so what we're going to do is we're going to dive deep into helping you gain those skills so that you can show fewer homes and you can set those expectations with confidence. And then we're also going to set clear expectations on what a buyer must do before showings begin. And some of those things Sarah's going to go into here in a minute. One of the additional things that I would suggest is have them drive by the property. You know, that's probably the easiest thing. And Sarah's going to get into more of the detail stuff and the you know, some of like the pre-approval type things. But an easy way for people to count out a property is to drive by it. Take a look at the neighborhood, see what's going on with the neighbors. People are home right now, so you can see how many dogs do the neighbors have that are in their yard. Are they working on their trucks in the front yard? What do those types of things look like? So Sarah, maybe will you want to jump in and kind of go through more in detail of what those in-person showings look like right now?
Yeah, so it's interesting because even though we're talking about some ways to sharpen your skills in a shifting market, Jen, you nailed it perfectly just a minute ago when you said these are practices that we can focus our energy and attention on right now that will benefit us in any market. So I think that's where I love this topic, and kind of how Jen and I came up with this webinar topic is there are some changes that we might be being forced to make right now in our business. And I don't like to use the word force, but we're adapting, right? Like Jen said earlier, there are best practices and then there are common practices. And I would go one step further and say right now we're even looking at some adaptive practices that will eventually become our best practices when we start to recognize how much more efficient we can be when it comes to just showing houses. So Jen, I know you and I both have had so many conversations about how early on in our career as buyer agents, we would be the victim of showing buyers, you know, 30+ houses, and at the end of the day go, what am I even doing, right? And so anytime we can minimize the number of homes that we're showing, that's going to not only keep that buyer's faith in us as their agent, it's going to help us be more efficient and operate at a very high level. So right now, when it comes to how are homes being shown, right? In your market, it could be very different than things are in my market, yet we really have 2 options right now. We have an in-person showing and we have a virtual showing. And like Jen mentioned earlier, we have to meet the client where they're at. are they comfortable being out in other people's properties right now? And how can we best set our client up for success by following the current CDC guidelines for in-person showings, and make sure that the sellers of the homes that we are showing are comfortable with us being in their property as well. So we want to start by setting the expectations with our buyers of what home shopping looks like right now. Okay. This is also a great opportunity for us to strongly encourage our buyers that only the decision makers, meaning the parties to the contract, the future contract, are the ones that should be there showing houses. Jen, I know you and I, again, have had so many conversations about all the crazy things that we've experienced when working with buyers. And I don't know about anybody else on this call, but I've had so many showings before where the entire like family that lives in town would come on all the showings. I mean, I had mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle. I even had a client bring a dog to a showing one time, and that's not a joke. So when we can minimize the number of people who we are meeting with to show homes in person to, not only are we minimizing our risk right now in the midst of a pandemic, we're also maximizing the conversation time and the client facing time we have with the people who are actually making the decision about a contract. Have you guys ever had a mom or dad of a buyer talk the buyer out of writing an offer on a property? I have, so I hope I'm not the only one. Yet what an opportunity right now to really set those clear expectations with our buyers to make sure that we are only allowing the decision makers to be with us in the properties that we're showing. Now, if you have an opportunity to do virtual showings in your market, there is an option to potentially collect some recorded video tours from your listing agent, right? If you can send your buyer video tours that have already been taken, I know a lot of agents right now are looking into Matterport and using different types of virtual touring platforms to provide a virtual tour of a property. That could be a very easy way, or a simple way. It's not easy, right? A simple way for you to pass those virtual tours off to your buyer and encourage them to look at the virtual tours for these 5 properties, and then based on those virtual tours, and like Jen mentioned earlier, a drive-by. Something so simple as a buyer driving by a house could eliminate one of the houses they thought they wanted to see. And so through process of elimination, by getting them videos that have been pre-recorded by a listing agent, encouraging them to drive by, that could also give you the opportunity as the agent to only have to client face them and show them 1 or 2 houses in person before you're writing an offer. So we're maximizing that efficiency there. One thing I will suggest is if you as the buyer agent have the opportunity right now to go and take a virtual tour or do a virtual showing for your buyer, one thing that one of my fellow MAPS coaches said on a call last Friday was a buyer can't ask a question to a video recording. So when you have the opportunity to be the one that's in the property taking a client through the home using your cell phone or using any other type of video recording platform, while it's more of a live video feed, the buyer can interact with you and ask questions about the property, and you can ask them questions too. So that's more of a, I guess, a high level or maybe a best practice or an adaptive practice virtual tour versus the actual video recording. Yet we have to consider what makes the most sense for our market and makes the most sense for the client and for ourselves too. So like I said, a buyer just can't ask questions to a recording. So when we can get out there and record the video for them or be there in a live video stream with the buyer while we're doing that virtual showing, that can also help us have the best opportunity to move our buyers forward. So it's really just critical to set those expectations with the buyers right now on just what our options are for showing homes, find out what works best for the buyer, meet them where they're at, and then agree on a plan to move forward. So Jen, the next slide here is one of my favorite conversations to have, and you have some great scripts around how to set really clear expectations with buyers on how many homes you're going to show them. And this is something, again, that can be an adaptive practice for now based on what's happening in the market with COVID-19, and also evolve into a best practice for your business to really make sure that you're operating efficiently.
Well, it's interesting, Sarah, what all those things that you just said, what we're doing is we're really flip-flopping how we used to do business. We used to do business and we would do a buyer consult, then we would go look at 2 or 3 homes, and of those 2 or 3 homes, then we were getting additional information. We were running comps, we were getting sellers disclosures, we were doing all these things. And now what we're doing is we're flip-flopping it. So we're doing the workload on the front part of it, And what's happening is instead of showing 2 to 3 homes, now we're showing 1 because we're providing that information. We've got the capability of giving them the information first to help them make a decision to eliminate some of the things that would later become a problem. We're actually removing more objections before we go show. And it's an interesting time. The other part of it is we're working in tandem with, as a team with these sellers. We're calling and saying, I'm going to give so much information to this buyer that if they want to come see it, it's legitimately the only house. They've comps, they've seen your disclosures, they've seen still videos, they've potentially seen a live video with just me in there, or they've seen a recorded video. Either way, I love the pro tip on the live video because you're 100% right, that you can engage the buyer, you can answer questions, you can mirror match them, right? You can see how what they're doing. And so what's happening then, if the buyer wants to go take a look at the house, I can say to the seller, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we're ready. They have had all this, they've driven by, they're ready to come in. I need you to leave every light on, every door open, including cabinet doors, so that we're not doing anything except the front door. And so we're walking in and the seller may say, well, that's not how I want to show my house. I don't want my cabinet doors open. And guess what? We've seen every other thing. We just need to get a feel for the house. So it's interesting when we're doing these consults with buyers. Number one, we talk often in lead generation about the speed to lead, right? So we've got a speed to lead from the lead comes in, we capture it, and we respond to it. Now the lead comes in, we capture it, and we get them on a consult, which is on demand, right? We're an on-demand consult right now. We've got the capability of doing more consults in less time because of this virtual format. And so all of a sudden we look at this, and when we're setting these expectations in the consult, where the script in a traditional market may be, I'd rather ask 500 questions to show you 5 homes versus asking you 5 questions and then I'm going to show you 500 homes. What we're doing is we're setting the stage that we're the experts. All of a sudden the market really needs us again, right? They really need our expertise and they really need us to walk them through this. And so they're not going to push back when you say, your top 5 properties, I'm going to have you drive by. I'm going to get you a video any which way that I can. You're going to see as much information about these houses, and then we're going to go take a look at your top choice. We're showing on average right now, I mean, if you have an average, 1 house per buyer. Now, there's more office time. There are more times that I'm maybe previewing a house than I've done in years, where I'm going in and taking the video and doing those things. And it's just the flip-flop. It's all we're doing is we're heavy load, we're doing the heavy load of kind of research, and then we're showing the 1 house. And if you've got great admin support, look how leveraged your time is. Those are not necessarily things that you have to do minus the video. So all of those steps, we're setting ourselves up so that in the consultation, we're going to show fewer homes. And Sarah, you and I talk about it often. If you show a buyer 30 houses or 40 houses, in the back of your mind, you think you're doing something great for them. You think that you're becoming their friend. They want to hang out with you. They like your conversation. And in reality, they don't want a friend. They want an expert in the market. And they begin to lose faith in you the more homes that you show them.
They absolutely
do. This is a reminder. When we're doing these consults and we're doing them virtually, we're still diving in really, really deep to the motivation and the timeline. We can't miss right now because we've got to make sure that we're spending our time with someone that can do something now. That doesn't mean we're going to drop the people that can't purchase for 60 to 90 to 19 months from now, but we're going to put them in our pipeline and we're going to follow up with them. We're only showing homes to people that are ready, willing, and able to buy right now. They've got the pre-approval letter. They're ready to go. And I know, Sarah, you and I, we go back and forth on scripts and which one of us likes different scripts and different things. And you're going to get into this pre-approval in kind of a much deeper way. Kind of talk us through, what does that look like for you?
So what's interesting about all of this, and in such a great way, is, and Jen, I don't know about you, I heard you mention that you're seeing your team show even fewer houses now than maybe they have before. I noticed that with the Loken group as well. Our average number of homes shown per buyer per week went down a full showing from March to April. So it's things that we kind of had this aha moment of like, why haven't we been doing this the whole time?
Uh-huh.
Right? Why
I
haven't
love
we been doing all this front end research? Why haven't we been asking our buyers or encouraging them to drive by the houses first, drive through the neighborhood, go to the closest grocery store or gas station and see who's there? Those are your neighbors, right? It blew my mind that we had gotten so far away from what our kind of foundational practices had been. So anyhow, what you're going to hear me say next is, okay, well, what does a buyer and what must a buyer and an agent do before showings begin? Again, this is an expectation we set with our buyers all the time. And you're probably looking at this thinking, well, of course, Sarah, I'm going to ask my buyer to get pre-approved. I don't want to generalize this, yet I do know there are a lot of buyer agents out there who will agree to meet a buyer and show property before they have any kind of financial assurance that a buyer is in a position to buy a house right now. I've done it before too. Jen, I know that you have as well. And now more than ever, when we can set the expectation with our buyer of getting pre-approved to advance to the next step in our process, right? Them getting pre-approved is going to activate our next step in our home buying process. And I put this quick script together, you can see here on the slide, that reads, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, now more than ever, home sellers are cautious about who they allow into their homes for showings. When we can provide the seller with your home loan pre-approval at the time we request a showing, we increase our chances of getting that showing approved. And guys, I'm going to be real honest. I have not had a seller, to my knowledge, that one of my buyer agents have requested a showing on that they didn't approve the showing without getting a copy of a pre-approval. Yet, what an opportunity for us to have a conversation with our buyers about what has to happen to make sure we are ultimately setting them up for success, because that could happen. I think about if I had my home on the market right now, what I might be doing differently as a home seller, and that would be something that I'd consider, because I know with my having my husband here and my 2 young kids, I would really only want somebody who I know could buy this house to walk my property. That's me personally, and I'd imagine that there are other sellers that feel the same way. So even though we know, guys, as buyer agents, that this is a best practice, now's the time for us to help the buyer better understand and best set that expectation about why we need to have that pre-approval to right now just get our showings approved. Forget about we have to have it to make an offer. Right now, we might have to have it just to get a showing approved. So that's a great script that you guys can use there. And then of course, like Jen and I've been talking about before, I think it's a best practice to put into place moving forward for all the homes and buyers that you're going to show houses to encourage them to drive by houses a day or two before showings. You know, in our consultations here at the Loken Group, we do set some expectations around how we need at least 24 hours notice to schedule a showing appointment. And actually, we go one step further, where at the end of a showing appointment, if we aren't writing an offer, we're having that regroup conversation that we've already asked permission to have, meaning, what did I miss? What are you still looking for that we haven't seen yet, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer? And I'm scheduling that next showing appointment while I'm still with that client. So that way I don't allow them the opportunity to come to me last minute and say, hey, this house just hit the market, let's go see it today. So that eliminates that jump and run showing. Yet when we set that expectation in the consultation of, I'm going to need 24 hours notice to schedule showings for you, that gives the buyer the opportunity to scout out the area first, and we can remind them to go ahead and do their part of their homework or their part of the bargain to drive by those listings first, because chances are you're going to have 5 homes scheduled to show them. They're going to do a drive-by and they're going to come back and say, you know what, Sarah, we don't want to see house number 2 or house number 5. Take them off the list. And you've already knocked that list down of homes you intended to show in person from 5 to 3. So it works like a charm. And again, something else that we hadn't been doing at a high level, which just blew my mind about why we hadn't been. We got caught up in other stuff, right? And here's what the agent must do, guys. How many of you get an email list or a text message list of houses that your buyers want to see, and you go, yep, no problem, I'll get it all set up, without taking into any consideration what exactly those houses look like, what features those houses have? I understand it takes more time for us as the agent to start to sift through or filter through a list of houses that our buyers want to see yet. But guys, now more than ever, that's so critical, because anytime we can eliminate one property from a list of houses that our buyers want to see, we're minimizing our risk in the pandemic, and we're also, again, using our time much more efficiently, because it doesn't make sense to show our buyers a home if we know it's a house they wouldn't buy. Right, Jen?
Sorry, I was muted. That's exactly right.
That's okay. I was like,
muted myself
you
because
disappear.
my office is being loud, and I'm like, so I muted myself. You know, I love that, Sarah. Like I love the conversation that you're having, because you guys, you sold 2,500 homes last year, and you're still learning and you're still making adjustments. So the individual agent that sold 15 houses last year, think about how easy it would be to make some of these adjustments, because in your world, Sarah, you were making micro corrections. In their world, these micro corrections will take you from 15 to 30 sales in a year.
Yeah.
And I know there are a handful of questions, I think, in here that we may want to, do we have time to get to? I think we do.
Yeah, so let's, before we head over to questions, I'm watching the clock, because I know how you and I can get lengthy on these webinars here. So real quick, guys, we want to make sure that you all know about the group coaching program that Jen and I have the pleasure and opportunity to partner with MAPS to host, that starts on June 10th. Which is, it's so interesting to me that June is not that far away. Yet we're going to go into depth on just all things buyer agents, guys, and how to master working as a buyer agent through different phases of a buyer agent's world, and growing into a kind of a team within a team model, adding buyer agent leverage. We have some really great content that we want to share with you. And if anyone's on this webinar who took our first launch of our program back in March, was that March, Jen? I can't believe it. We're even going to change some things and make things more timely every time we have a new launch of this program, because we have to make sure we're mastering the market of the moment. And that's something that Gary Keller has been telling us for weeks now on his live stream, and in all the live streams that Gary, and knowledge that Gary's pouring into us, is we have to make sure we're working in the market of the moment. So we'll be talking about all things buyers, and you can see a quick list here on the screen of all the things that we'll be covering in our group program. So Jen, why don't you give us the details on what they can expect as far as time frame, what the investment is, and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. And I think this time, one of the adjustments we're making, honestly, is we're making our workbooks a startup for you guys for script books. So we're going to be adding the scripts to those workbooks. So by the end of the program, you'll have scripts for really every phase of your business. So the next launch, we're going to launch Wednesday, June 10th. The program is 6 weeks, and it is every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So investment is $198. We understand and appreciate those of you that have the ability to make this investment yourselves. Right now is the time to fill your head with the voices that have been there, are still there, and working with you through this. And that's our goal, is to provide you real-time information, so that on the other side of this, you have a playbook for your buy-side business that you feel really, really confident in. So you can register at mapscoaching.com/group. So we'll get into some questions, and I think we're going to end for once on time.
Let's not put all our eggs in one basket yet, Jen. Okay, so Jen, you talked about this in one of the slides that you were on, and yes, Kate, real quick, I saw your question pop in. It's 11 o'clock Central Time on Wednesday, starting June 10th for 6 weeks in a row. And of course, based on wherever you're at, that might change the start time for you. So one of the questions here is from Daniel, and he's asking, how's the conversation with the listing agent when we need to ask permission to show a live video for a buyer? So Jen, what experience have you had on that conversation with a listing agent in your market?
So honestly, we're coming from contribution. This is my time to reestablish or strengthen relationships with agents. So when I call the listing agent, I call and I say, you know, hey, Sarah, it's Jen. I have a buyer that's interested in 123 Main Street. Do you happen to have a video of the property? And if they say yes, great. I start there, and we use that video before I schedule a live showing. If they say no, then I will say, hey, Sarah, I've really got somebody that's interested. Would you mind if I went and I did a live showing with my client while I'm there? And at the same time, before I leave the house, since I'm already in there, I'll go ahead and shoot a video for you with no audio so that you have it in your library in case anybody else asks. So I am going in and I'm getting what I need, and I'm providing value to the agent. If they don't have the capacity that potentially I have because I'm on a team, I'm willing to help out, and they're going to remember that, right? I'm offering something to them that they haven't yet been able to do. And it's really, I've had people, honestly, they're very thankful. I've had no pushback.
Yeah, and I love that come from contribution, because you're exactly right, Jen. There are so many agents right now who may not have the capacity to go out and take a video recording of their listings. You know, in an event that a seller, or if you're in a market that's still on shelter in place, and maybe in more of a strict shelter in place than other markets, there could be a conversation between you and the listing agent to even encourage the seller to do a walking video tour of their property, right? Guys, sellers who have their homes in the market right now they need to sell, most likely. So how can we partner together to get what we both need?
I love that, because what happens when what we're noticing is our sellers that want to shoot the videos, their condition is going up. So things sell based on price, condition, or location, right? And we can adjust price, we can't fix location, we can usually improve condition if a seller is willing to listen to it. However, when they're taking that video and we're walking them through how to take the video and they're seeing it through the eyes of the buyer, their condition also just got better.
Yes, because they go, wow, I've got to paint this wall, or man, those things look terrible, I've got to move this around. So again, guys, we want to respect your time. We're just a little bit over a minute yet. There was one question on here. Lori, yes, the sessions, the webinar sessions for the group program are 1 hour. Shame on me for not having that in the slides. Yet Pierre's asking the question of how many times do you need to ask I'd rather ask you 500 questions now and show you 5 homes, and only ask you 5 questions and show you 500 houses. Pierre, my perspective is that we only ask that question once, and it's at the consultation. And then as we move through that process with that buyer, like Jen mentioned earlier, if I'm going to meet the buyer once and show them 3 houses and they're not making an offer, I'm going to take a step back and say, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I really want to apologize. I must have missed something. These 3 houses that we just saw have all the things that you told me that you wanted. And I'm really curious, what are you still looking for that we haven't seen yet? Because I've already asked all those questions in the consultation. I should be really clear at that point on what that buyer needs. And if they're not making an offer the first time we go out and see a few houses, then I did miss something. So.
And it's not always criteria that you miss. Sometimes it's motivation, and sometimes it's timeline. So usually that's when you get into it, and that's why you're doing the regroup script after 3 houses, so that you're not going too far down the rabbit trail. Sorry, I love this topic.
And Lori asked a question, Jan, I think that this is a great question for you, actually. So she said, what if all the homes are super similar? You keep pointing that out, but they still insist on viewing them all. That's never happened to you, I know.
No, never. Nope. I don't think that's happened to any other buyer's agent. You know, it does happen where people are like, I want to see all 10 homes. I have 10 houses I want to see. Number one, I would say I completely understand. And Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I'm going to show you homes until you fall in love. I want the lights. I want your eyes to light up. I want you to be excited. I want you to be super pumped about this house. The things I need you to do, though, or understand, is the market that we're in. And this is based on your different markets, guys. The market that I'm in is still very low inventory. And if we go and we look at 10 homes, and I typically put them in order that the first 3 are the best 3 houses, and they progressively get worse. By the time we finish looking at house number 10 with the new requirements that we have to meet and the additional steps we have to take, houses 1, 2, and 3 are gone. And if I don't explain to you that that's what's going to happen, you're going to be really disappointed in me when we get to house 10 and you want to go back to house 1. So I completely understand. You have these 10 houses. Go drive by them. Go drive by and just see if we can't cut a few of them out. If not, we will work around it. I just need you to understand I don't want you to be disappointed. So that's usually how we handle it, and people do get very realistic about it. I mean, that typically nobody wants a second choice house, and they understand that. And so we really don't get a lot of pushback once we've explained it in a way that they can understand it.
Yeah, I love that. And last question, I'm gonna knock through this one, and then we want to make sure we're respecting everyone's time. Yeah, you're all still here, so this is great. So Donna's asking, what do you do when the client always wants to submit an offer that is way below list price? And Donna, I love this question. And again, you're noticing, guys, that Jen and I keep talking about how this all goes back to the expectations we set with the buyer in the consultation. And we spend a full week in our group program on expectations in the buyer consultation. Yet when we're in that consultation, Donna, and we're talking to a buyer, a prospective buyer at that point, one of the questions I love to ask to a buyer before we even get into the content and the meat and potatoes of buying a house right now is, Jen, what's your perspective of our housing market right now? I ask the buyer that I'm meeting with or that I'm talking to where they're at and understanding what's happening in our market, because I can use their answer to either validate what they know to be true or what they've heard, what their friend told them, whatever. Or if in that moment that prospective buyer says, well, gosh, Sarah, the market's going to tank, I can offer 50% under market value for any house that I see. I'm going to interrogate that a bit. And I'm going to say, Jen, that's interesting. Help me understand where you're getting your information from, because then in that moment I can let Jen know what's happening in our market and what's happening in certain price points, because just like Jen said, in her market in Springfield, they have low inventory, and we have the same thing in Houston, where we're even seeing lower inventory and more buyers right now, where our multiple offer situations have increased in just the last few weeks. So if I know in that consultation that I'm talking to a buyer who is wanting to make a low offer, I can redirect their mindset right there about how the market's really responding right now. And if it is somebody who's like, well, I've been told to never offer full price for a house, I might take that into a conversation of like, Mr. Buyer, I can appreciate that. And what I'm hearing you say is that you want to save money. I would talk about the ways in which I, as a buyer agent, can help them save money. Same thing with a buyer who says they want a deal. Well, a deal to Jen could be very different than a deal to me. So I want to find out what that deal looks like to them and what that means. And then so that I'm meeting them where they're at by finding out where they think the market is, what they think a deal looks like. And I'm using my market knowledge and my understanding of the market right now to either help them validate that, yes, what they believe to say or what they believe right now is true, or to give them factual data on, here's what's actually happening. Here's what it takes to compete in our market right now. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, based on what you've heard, what are you thinking now? Because that buyer might say, I don't want to compete. And then I would have to say, then right now might not be a time for you to buy a house.
I love that. Sarah, that was awesome.
I know I talk super fast. Yeah. This is my 4th cup of coffee today, so forgive me. Anyway, guys, Jen, anything else that you wanna add to this group, guys? Any other questions that you have? We're here to answer them, so let us know.
I have so much more I want to talk about because I'm so excited. And I think we do have another 30-minute webinar in 2 more weeks, and then the group program starts after that. So yeah. I am going to write myself some notes so that I remember all the additional things that I want to talk about.
Yes, we are so excited, guys. If you have any questions about anything we've covered today, any questions about our group program, or any questions about coaching in general, you can reach out to MAPS. Troy, you want to jump in and let them know where they can reach out to you guys with any questions?
Yeah, email is maps@kw.com.
Write that down. Super easy, guys. And you can also reach out to Jen or I directly. We're pretty easy to find, I think. So we'd love to have you join us starting June 10th. Thank you so much for your time today, guys. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Have a great day. Bye, Sarah. Bye, Troy.
Bye, Jen. Bye, Troy. See you guys later.
Bye, yeah.